Welcome back
to the Synchronicity Podcast. Shiloh is making an appearance before she takes a nap, as per usual. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Megan.
And we change your brain to change your life. We take old programming that was given to you in childhood, give you a new perspective into adulthood, and hopefully you can use plant medicine or not to rewire
the brain.
Yeah, and take things that were what you were taught and flip them on their head and integrate them into your adulthood and hopefully pass them on to your children so that we get to break trauma cycles and we don't keep repeating them.
How to take radical accountability for your life so you can do whatever you want with your life.
Pretty much that. So today we are going to talk about autonomy and strokes because, well, this is a big topic of society. And if you listen to our last podcast, we talked about narcissists and empaths, and autonomy and strokes are a huge part of creating a very healthy relationship, not only with your children, but also with your partner, because it allows for the individual to be themselves. Autonomy, it's the word autonomy. And instead of what we had talked about previously of one fixing the other and one being self-absorbed and being all about them, empath versus narcissist. And so when you're able to step into and allow people to not only be themselves, but also you practice autonomy and positive strokes with your communication, you allow to create and build a healthier relationship.
Yeah, and it's when we don't allow people to be who they are, we damage them. And, essentially the old way of raising children was like, how do I morph them into a being that listens and does what I want? I'm not saying all parents did that, but the majority of parents have, right? Our school systems and all of that doesn't preach or allow autonomy. It teaches you how to fit inside the cookie cutter box. And if you don't, then you're fucked up or damaged or whatever, right? And when we allow somebody to be autonomous, we allow for authenticity. And the two highest vibrations are love and authenticity. But as children, we are taught, right, because it's all about us, right? A child sees the world through themselves. And it's like, oh, well, if that person's acting like that, then what did I do wrong? Or so it's always about not the parent having a hard day or the school systems being fucked up. They see it as broken. Like, I'm not good enough or I'm not good or whatever. And it damages the child. And a lot of us grew up with this inferiority because of the school systems and the things, because who we were was never good enough. Mm-hmm. And we were always taught to focus on what we were bad at, never what we were exceptional at, right? It's like, oh, I have a C in math, so I need to get a tutor in things. If we have a C in math, okay, great. You're always going to be mediocre at math, but where are you excelling? That's what they should teach children to focus on, because those are your God-given gifts. But we're not taught that. We're taught to, and it translates and transmutes into relationships and everything else, where we're trying to fix other people. We're trying to focus on the negative, focus on what to fix. All of those kinds of things, instead of focusing on the good or instead of focusing on what your strengths are. And, again, we accommodate for what we're not good at, but we don't have to be good at everything. And so when you're not allowed to be autonomous, you become a people pleaser, a victim, a doormat. You have no autonomy because you're constantly trying to figure out what people want from you. Or how to be accepted and morphing into that. And you have a generations of people that don't know who they are because of that. And we're not taught autonomy. We don't get to be ourselves just because, that's our God-given right. We have to be whoever anybody else wants us to be in order to be accepted by humanity and society. And that's why part of our work is learning to accept other people. Even if people are narcissists, jerks, murdering somebody, whatever, they have a right to make those choices. And that's a very hard shift for our consciousness to make of moving away from expectations of other people. And we've talked about this a little bit, and just allowing people to be who they are, because they have a right to be who they are and make the decisions that they make. And that's why a lot of the communication that we teach always starts with, you have every right too, da 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 da, or thank you for sharing, or whatever, because you're allowing somebody space to be who they are and respond that the way that they need to in that moment and things like that. And you're not taking offense to what somebody else is doing. You're just saying, all right, I see you. You're not saying, oh, well, you didn't act the way that I wanted you to, so I'm going to shame you. And that's a very, I would say that the majority of people respond that way, right? If somebody's not behaving the way that they want them to, they then pain stroke them, right? Like, why'd you just say that? Or why do you do that? Pain stroke versus, you know, and I'm sorry, let me backtrack for a second. Strokes, there are 3 types of strokes. People strokes, highest. Animal strokes, second. And the lowest vibration is thing strokes. And when we collapse into the material plane, it's because people and animals aren't safe. And so you see like narcissists and people like empaths loving animals more than they love people because people aren't safe. They don't let them be autonomous. Material and animals let you be autonomous. So people are getting their strokes from things and animals, and things are addiction. Animals are great. I highly recommend animals, but when people aren't safe, things are. So, you know, when you grow up in pain strokes and shame strokes, right, of not allowing you to be yourself, of why did you act like that, or how dare you, you know, get a C in class, or, you know, these pain strokes, instead of, you know, you have every right not to focus on your math homework, but, you know, if you want to go to college or you want to do this, you're going to need to focus on that. So it's allowing somebody to be human. Like, what a fucking concept. But I was raised like that. We both were. You know, we weren't allowed to be autonomous. We didn't get strokes for just being alive and being human beings. And our parents weren't either. They didn't know any better. But my recommendation for anybody in life is to allow other people to be autonomous. It will change your entire world. It will change all of your relationships. People have a right to be who they are. We don't have a right to put our expectations and our wants, needs, and desires and make them somebody else's responsibility. They're nobody else's responsibility. And so you're a victim if you're not allowing other people to be autonomous.
Well, and the baseline of it is school. I mean, I'm sitting here and like we've talked about this. I mean, this is like some of the baseline of our work, right? And like the school system literally strips children of autonomy.
Absolutely.
You have to fit into this. You are a circle, and you have to fit into this circle hole. And if you, God forbid, you fit into a square or a triangle, like, don't be different. Don't have a different, you know, perspective of life. You have to fit into this conveyor belt. And I think right now we're really starting to see the breakdown of the school systems. We're starting to see more and more parents speak out about like the broken system and the way in which it used to be versus what it is going to become. And I think a big part of the new school systems are going to be autonomy. It's going to be more of these older ways of having children be individuals. And we're starting to, it's slow and it's going to take a process. But, you know, even going back to, you know, I think about the COVID vaccines, like no one had autonomy. Like everyone like was pushed into doing this and then they were shamed if they didn't. So, you know, we're seeing it on a cultural trauma, like on a societal level, because, you know, I personally had many friends that got vaccinated. Megan did too. I didn't give a shit. You do you, boo. Like, but the pushback was the other way. Like, at the time, you know, I owned a business and people were like, well, so-and-so needs to do this so I feel safe. And it's like, okay, well, if you don't feel safe, then don't come in.
Also, isn't that the point of a vaccine? If you get vaccinated, then you're safe.
So it was, but we're seeing this on a level that is so much greater than just baseline. Like it's being programmed societally.
It's victimology.
Yeah. And it's actually fucking fascinating because the majority of this is done in a subliminal aspect. A majority of people don't even understand that their autonomy is being taken away every single day they get on social media. They go to work, they drop their kids off at school, their relationship, like, the baseline of it is so broad and so blanketed over like cultures and generations that it's just normal now. And that's the thing is that we have to really come back to self and allowing not only ourselves to be ourselves, our true authentic self, right? And getting a relationship with ourselves to be able to then say, hey, you're allowed to do you. You're allowed to be whoever you want to be. And I can choose as an autonomous human being whether that person stays in my life or not.
But I mean, this is a wormhole that I fucking love. I'm gonna totally go down this wormhole. But this goes back to God-given rights.
Yeah.
Our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, when the federal papers were all written based on God-given rights, autonomy.
Yeah.
And we have taken God of our understanding, right? It doesn't have to be like the Christian God or anything, just God of your understanding out of humanity.
Yeah, but look at what happened during COVID. Separation of church and state was completely devolved and they were shutting churches down.
But do you know what's interesting? Separation of church and state isn't even in the Constitution. It is not in the Constitution.
You're right. No.
And the separation of church and state, it was actually implemented so that the government never had control over God or people's ability to worship God.
Right.
It was nothing about the churches taking over the government, because the government, our Declaration of Independence is actually based off the Ten Commandments, and it's based off of the fact that God-given rights, that means God was already part of our government, and the president is still sworn in on the Bible, and it's just really fascinating, right, of like, you actually cannot take the church out of our government.
Well, but then, but that makes sense now, right? Because right, and we've also taken it where like everything is under control, where there's not just the people, and there's not just the government, and there's not just the church. It's all being warped into this like massive mixing pot of like, I mean, we could break this down into like taxes. I mean,
that's stealing, and it's kind of a scam.
But, but it's like you're still not separated from the government, no matter what. If you're a W-2 employee, you are literally ball and chain to the government. They take stuff out of your check whether you like it or not. That's not autonomy.
I have less of a problem with that than I do like the welfare state, right? Because in today's world, like I understand like things happen and that people need a shoe up. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about in today's America, welfare is actually more expensive than the military. And there are more people not working than working. Mm-hmm. And for the first time in history, millennials have a lesser income, a lesser living stature than our parents. It's the first time in American history that's ever happened, that our ability to make money and earn is actually, and own things, right? Like houses is actually less than our parents. And so the American dream has died because we have lost autonomy, and we've gone into this victimology that has actually been implemented by the government because they don't want the American dream. And when you read books like Outwitting the Devil and things like Nefarious and stuff like this,
it's such a mindfuck.
But it's not a mindfuck because it's literally telling you what is happening.
Yeah.
And if we don't come back into understanding that we are souls having a human experience and step back into who we are, and that we have, we have God, divinity is a part of every single one of us, and we all have gifts that have been divinely given to each of us. But we're not taught that, right? We're taught, oh, well, you're just a human. Okay, great. Well, I'm just a human, but I have gifts, and I have the ability to help other people. And I have these, I don't pray anymore to, and I just for reference, I don't really identify as Christian or anything else, right? I believe in a God greater than us. So when I say all of these things,
drank too much ayahuasca at this point.
Drank too much ayahuasca. Don't think that I'm putting God in a box, because I'm not.
No.
But I found God on a yoga mat. You want to know where I found God? I found God on a yoga mat, and then part of that was a yoga mat out in the jungle drinking ayahuasca, where I really understood how much divinity and autonomy is in each of us, and our autonomy is directly linked to God, because when we step forward into who we came here to be, our autonomy propels us into what our ancestors all knew, is that there is no government or anything that control us unless we give them the power over us.
Well, but, you know, I think about our own journey, right? And like, you and I were both for so long a part of the system.
Oh,
and then, you know, everything came crashing down in 2020. And like, I remember us both being absolutely devastated. I mean, I remember being in shock when I like flew into DC to come pick you up and like move you back, right, to Colorado. And I remember just like, we were, I think, both just like, what the fuck just happened?
For sure.
Like, literally, quite literally, what the fuck? But in that aspect, and understanding now in hindsight, it's always, you know, 2020 and 5 years later, and having, you know, failed in our company and risen from the ashes, it was all about stepping out of a system that we didn't have autonomy in.
But it was also being our authentic selves, because the scariest thing to me was saying shit like this on camera.
Yeah.
Because I wanted everyone to like me.
But it's also the new age of like, you have to take autonomy and you have to become an entrepreneur, or you're just going to be stuck in the system of everybody telling you who and what you are. Do this to get this amount of money. Do this to get this promotion. Do this to match your 401k, blah, 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 blah. And like, okay, well, I hate to break it to you, but you're enslaved into a system that does not allow you to have autonomy. And I was a part of that too. I totally understand. And I even watched, like, you know, my parents, like, they're still a part of the system. They're, you know, like Social Security and Medicare, like, they're still a part of it because they paid into it. And I think they see it, but they don't have another choice.
They bought in for so long, they don't know how to get out.
Right.
And the thing is like, that's consciousness of like, if you don't want to be a part of something anymore, then don't be a part of it. And the thing that just kind of set me on fire is like, you know, do I believe in a good God or do I believe in a bad God? And every day I wake up and I get to make that choice. And if I believe in a bad God, then I don't show up and I'm not who I was born to be. But if I believe in a good God and I believe that we were all put here for a reason, then I better step forward as who I am and shine my light on where it's needed, or I'm not doing my side, right? And that's like, you know, my mentor said to us once, it's like, every day that you're not showing up and following your dreams, the devil wins. And that frickin' wrecked me, because I wasn't showing up and I was terrified of who I was and of people really seeing me. And, you know, when I said that to Nicole, I remember I was sitting in the car, and I'll never forget that day, because we like looked at each other and we're like, fuck, oh my gosh, this isn't just about like, you know, oh, making money and this and that. It's so much bigger than that. It's like, when you have knowledge, you have to share it. You know, at the end of your life, you should have given away all of your gifts. You should have at the end of your life, you will live a life full of fulfillment,
willingness.
And when you show up and you give what you have been given to the next generation, and that's what we're not doing. Everything's a competition. If you look at like politics and everything, they're not helping each other. They're not turning around and helping the people behind them to be better than them. It's like, heaven forbid that the generation behind me be better than I was. And actually, Nicole and I even say this, I pray every day that our clients don't need us and that they move on, and that like, I'm not doing my job if they need me for their whole life. They may come back and like need a reference or need a swift kick in the pants of like, you know, you need to step up. But that's, if you need somebody forever, or you have somebody that's trying to make you reliant on them forever, you've got a problem.
Well, and most of our clients within a year are fully autonomous. They come in very codependent and they leave very autonomous.
That's because they understand who they are.
Yeah.
And like, also it's vibrational, right? You download information from people you just hang out with. You are who you hang out with. So if you spend time with us, then you become like us. And at this point, we're fairly autonomous.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. So pretty much the bottom line is that autonomy is super important, and seeing others as separate is the goal. And at any point, and you can practice this like with your kids and like life and your boss, and like when someone pisses you off, like let him be an asshole. You know, tell him you have every right to be an asshole, but I don't appreciate you talking to me like that. Give people the ability and the understanding that you recognize them as an individual, and that you have no expectation of them and you don't want to control them is pretty much like the baseline of what autonomy is. Like, you do you be in your authentic self, and like, you're separate from everybody else. Stop trying to control the outside world, because you're just going to drive your damn self crazy.
Well, and one thing is, real quick, is, our dad got sober when Nicole and I accepted him fully and let him be an autonomous being. And someday, like, we'll talk more about that story. But it was in the moment of, we love you for who you are, no matter what you are. And letting him being an alcoholic and loving him anyway, granting him autonomy before we knew what it was. That's actually a week later he got sober.
Yeah, he sure did. That was a good story. Actually, I just reread it in our book that we are currently reworking to get out. Yay!
Yeah,
we're publishing a book. So, if you are following us on YouTube, subscribe to us. We're still very much babies in the YouTube world, but where numbers are moving and people are talking. Instagram and Spotify, Apple, like, share, comment. If there's any topics that you're like, hey, I want to know information about, hey, do you guys know about this? Shoot us a message, DM us, Synchronicity_sisters, and we will 100%. We will get back to you in regards to whether we know enough about that topic to cover it in a podcast, or we will do research or talk to our mentors or read a book about it to be able to get you information. But until next time, bye.